All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to tonight's episode of Teen Talk Live. I am your host, Ann Dillard, and I am so glad that you've chosen to join us for this exciting episode. This is not something we necessarily want to talk about, but we need to talk about. And so tonight I have a special guest, Lady O. I'm going to have her introduce herself in just a second. And she is here to help us navigate this talk about grief and loss. Welcome, Lady O. Welcome to Teen Talk Live.
Thank you so much. It's such a delight to be here. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Anna. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for saying yes, right? Because this is such a very important topic that we need to talk about.
It is, and it's one
Yeah.
of those things, like you said, nobody wants to talk about it. Like nobody wants to talk about planning and all of those type of things or what have you. But it is so necessary. And as a nation and as a world, we're all dealing with grief and loss right now, whether we identify or recognize that or not. We are.
That is so true. So before we jump in, just tell the people who you are, where you're located, and who do you serve.
Certainly. So again, my name is Olivia Tate, and I go by Lady O. I just was given that name and rolled with it. I live in Augusta, Georgia, so it's about 2 hours south of the Atlanta area, and I am a licensed and ordained minister in the Baptist Church, and so I have had the honor of serving my local church in a variety of capacities, particularly women's ministries and children's ministries. And in that, I was doing a good bit of like pastoral counseling and pastoral congregational care. And what I realized is that I really was not equipped to deal with the gamut of that our congregants were dealing with. And so I went back to school a few years ago to complete my master's in clinical counseling. So God has positioned me to be able to merge faith and mental health, because we are dealing with some things that prayer does not always fix. Sometimes the answer to prayer, I should say, would be to go and get some help, get some medical help, get some mental health assistance and things like that. And so I have the joy of being able to merge both of those modalities and help people.
Isn't that a wonderful intersection? to be able to merge both of those, and I had a similar path to my clinical work as well, and so I am grateful for both areas to be able to practice my faith and also to practice the clinical perspective of healing.
For sure, because we're a whole person. Like we are,
Oh,
so we definitely have to be able to minister to the whole, person. And so to be able to bring that to the table. And of course, I recognize in the space that I'm in that, I recognize when I'm in a ministerial position, and I
yeah.
recognize when I'm in the clinical position or what have you. So, I act accordingly or what have you. And I'm never going to force my faith on anyone, but if they open the door and the opportunity presents itself, I definitely appreciate the opportunity to minister to both sides.
That is so awesome. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. So tonight, we're talking about grief and loss, and we're looking at the family. We're looking at what's going on in society with this global pandemic. And we're having, I scroll down my timeline, and it's like every day I'm seeing people losing people back and front, back. And it's like left and right, we're losing people. And, and so that in and of itself is hard to register. It's hard to comprehend, right? Because before you can grasp the idea that, okay, I just lost one person, then somebody else is, you lose another person. But there's
Mhm.
so much, there's such a wide gamut to loss and grieving.
Yes.
So I want us to have that conversation tonight about, what are we missing, or what do we need to be aware of when we're thinking about the experiences that we're having now?
Mhm. It's interesting when you talk about, specifically those types of losses, the loss of a loved one or what have you, and particularly in this time where, one of the ways that we can process a loss is through rules. And so even that has been, changed, has shifted in this climate, is the rituals of gathering together, gathering with the family, getting together with some fried chicken and, loving on one another or what have you, and then being able to get together and have a funeral. And that time we're, not even able to do that. So not only are you mourning that the loss of the person, you are mourning the loss of the ritual or the gathering that, that we've become accustomed to. So I first would like to kind of talk about what grief is, what
Yes,
that means, or define that in layman's terms.
yes,
The way I understand grief is that it is the loss or separation. It's the body's natural response to a loss or separation from something significant. It's a
mm,
natural response
right,
that
right,
our body experiences, this natural response to a loss or separation from something significant. And so whereas we normally assign that emotion to the loss of a loved one, there are so many other things that we're grieving right now.
oh yeah,
So many other things that we're grieving right now.
oh
You
yeah,
know, we're grieving systems. We're grieving our daily routines. We're grieving what we knew to be normal. What what
yeah,
what we understand to be normal. We're grieving our personal space because we
yeah,
are all together all day, every day.
yeah,
We're grieving our independence. We're grieving, some people are grieving the loss of jobs and,
yeah,
the loss of income,
yeah,
shifts in their relationships. Marriages are being affected because you
yeah,
had systems, you had ways about doing things, and now you're on top of each other,
yeah,
all day, every day. And I know
yeah,
specifically you asked me to talk about, our children. Like specifically, our kids need routines. They don't want them. They think they don't want them,
exactly.
but they thrive in systems and in organized schedules. And all of that in a matter of a couple of days changed for them. They're
Right.
grieving.
And look at the loss of friendship. You know how peers are so important to our children, right? And
Yeah.
they lost that connection with friends, that physical connection. That's a big loss.
Mhm.
And then what about the ones who've lost the milestone transitional things like
Mhm.
prom, graduation, senior,
Mhm.
activities and things like that. That is so huge.
It is. And these are things that they've built up and looked forward to for months and months and months, been counting down to it. There's been, as a minister, I had two weddings that I was officiating that have been, postponed. And these people have all these other vendors, caterers and things like that were already, secure. So you just think about just the overall effect that all of these things have, on the entire family. So it's not just the individual, that is experiencing the loss, but we grieve together. We hurt for our children. We hurt for our neighbor. We are a community. We are created to be in community with one another. So some of us are grieving, the inability to be in community and fellowship with one another, whether it is at work or school or church or our social civic activities and things like that. Like we are craving those opportunities, particularly people who live alone and don't even
Yeah.
have, the human connection within their home,
That is
the
so
human.
true. That
Mhm.
human connection is so critical. It's so critical. And it's so important that we talk about this because, there is a misnomer, especially in our community, that says that we have to be strong. And
Mm.
while we have to be strong, I am challenging everybody who I've been talking to redefine what strong means.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
what does that mean? Does it mean that you don't show your emotions? Does it mean that you just say yeah and just move on?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because grief will run its course. You can't
Oh
rush
yeah.
grief.
You cannot. Mm-mm.
You can put some time constraints on, and you can put some limits on some stuff, but you can't rush grief. Grief is gonna
Cannot.
take it's gonna run its course.
Right. And you can try to pull it. You can try to, stuff it down, but it may lay dormant for a moment. And I think that that is also what we're seeing right now too, is because what grief does is it really never goes away. I mean, we learn to process it and work through it, and we learn to lean into it, right? But it never really goes away. And that is why, when we experience another loss, a lot of times that that grief experience is compounded, because
Yes.
now we are not only dealing with the loss of this person or this job or this marriage or whatever that specific loss is, but we are also those familiar feelings that of grief that have been laying dormant, particularly those that we haven't tended to, those wounds that we haven't, salved and taken care of. They come right back up stronger and deeper than they were before. So yeah, grief is going to have her day, whether you want it to or not. So
That's
that's a
so
very good
true.
point.
That's so true. And I know you have some signs of grief that you want to
Mhm.
share with our audience. Tell us some more about it.
For sure. So some of the ways that grief can show up, particularly in our body. So we can experience grief and we can express grief, right? Right. Those are two different things, right? So the way that we experience grief often is we may experience sadness. We may experience, knots in our stomach. We may experience headaches or even nausea, pain, and we may have difficulty sleeping, we may have, some feelings of hopelessness and what have you. So those are ways that we can actually experience grief, right? And
Yes.
but how we actually express grief could also vary. So just because we're experiencing sadness does not necessarily mean that we will cry. Some people
Right.
are criers, some people will allow the tears to flow or what have you,
Yeah.
but some people will cuss you out.
Yeah. And want to fight.
Some people, right, and want to fight, right? Some people, are, calling in to work, whereas other people are trying to go to work because they're trying to stay busy.
Yeah.
Right. So how we express, what it is that we're feeling may vary from person to person. So we have to be careful to recognize that, particularly in our children, because like with smaller children, often they're not able to articulate what it is that they're feeling.
Exactly.
So stress may show up to them as bedwetting,
That's right. That's right.
nightmare,
Yes.
loss of appetite,
Yes.
increased appetite. you know but they don't know how to tell you that these things are happening to them because they are sad or that they're angry. They don't necessarily know how to do that. They may cry because they're sad, or they
Yeah.
may cry because they're angry, but
Yeah.
but they may struggle to be able to articulate that. And the
Yeah.
same thing for our teens. They may isolate.
Hmm.
They may go in their room and you don't see them or hear from them all day long or what have you. Again, they may not be able to tell you that this is what it is I'm feeling, I'm frustrated or what have you, but
Yeah.
they're isolating because that's all they know. That's They know how to deal with whatever it is that they're feeling. So how we have to respond, we recognize what is happening in our body. So then we have to choose to respond. So we've experienced it and we've expressed it. So then we have to choose to respond to that grief. And how
Yes.
some of the ways that we respond to it is first being real with yourself. Being real with yourself, particularly as adults. And we have such a great opportunity to model for our children
That's right.
how to respond.
That's right.
We can give them permission
That's right.
to feel what they feel based on how we feel what we feel, right?
Exactly.
So we're real enough with them to say, you know what, baby, I'm really scared. Like, I don't really know how this thing is going to pan out. Like, I'm really disappointed too.
Yeah.
That your graduation, is not going to be what we planned. I'm really hurt and upset about that too.
Yeah.
And being able to be real with them and not, oh, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna make this great and this, that, and the other. That might be the plan, but that's not necessarily what in that moment. They just
Exactly.
need you to be present. They need you to hurt with them, to cry with them.
Exactly.
To rejoice with them, to find some joys. Sometimes we have to search really, really hard.
Yeah.
Our current situation, we might have to search really, really hard to find joy.
That's right.
But there's joy somewhere in the midst of,
all
the
of
things
it.
that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things that we really need, I believe, in the space and time is empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And us being empathetic, we have to understand, we're feeling with that person. And we, and understanding that different people experience grief differently.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be somebody in the same house with you, and they could experience it and express it differently. And
Mm-hmm.
so being
And it can change
empathetic
from day to day or
day
moment
to
to moment.
day, right? Because typically we talk about the 5 stages of grief.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Let me see if I can remember them. It's the denial, the anger, the bargaining, right? And then stage 4 is, I forgot what stage 4 is. And then you go, the stage 4 could be depression, and then you go to acceptance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing about it is, when we're talking about grief, people might know those 5 stages, but it's important to know that people don't always experience all of those stages, or may not experience them in that order.
Right. Or they may not express them in the way that you expect them to express them. So again, we talked earlier about anger. So if you're going through the anger stage, my stage may look different than your anger stage. I may decide to internalize and be quiet about it, whereas you might decide, you might be one that is very expressive,
Yes.
And so what it looks like changes, as well, or varies rather from person to person.
And that's true. And it's also important to remember that depression in teens look differently than it does in adults. Depression in men look differently than it does in women. And so it's really important that we identify with the emotion that's going on, because the action may not be the same across the board.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's why it's really important to be able to have conversations, not to make assumptions, and sometimes not even to name it, because sometimes naming it grief can be, cause a wall to go up, because if I'm not ready to confront that I am experiencing grief, and you come to me trying to help me with my grief, that might not go over as well, right? So instead, if I can come to my child and say, well, tell me what you're thinking, help me understand what you're feeling right now.
That is so critical, right?
Asking these open-ended questions that invite them to share and invite you into their space is so important, because it shows that you're concerned and that you want to hear from them.
Right. And I like to ask particularly my younger clients too, where in your body are you feeling this?
hmm
What does that feel like? What does it make you want to do? Right. And
Yeah.
when is there a certain time that you feel it?
hmm hmm
To help them, navigate and to be able to recognize when that's happening in their bodies.
Right. And that helps them beyond the time that y'all spend together. So it gives them that familiarity, so that when that feeling comes up again, it's like, oh, I remember when we talked about this in our session, so I recognize that this is what that is, and here are the coping skills that we practice in order to be able to navigate this moment.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, I love it. This is all good stuff. And I'm looking at the time and I'm like, it's hard to believe we are almost at our half hour mark. Well, what else do you want to share with our audience about grief and loss?
The other little piece and really important part about how you respond is really recognizing how important it is for you to reach out to your tribe.
Mm.
Our tribe are our life givers, right? It's even in
Mm-hmm.
this time of being separate but together. But these Zoom calls or this phone call and being able to reach
Mm-hmm.
out and connect with people is so important. There are so many online
Yes.
Bible studies that are available. Being able to release and to be real with,
Yes.
our community. There is something about community. So
Yeah.
if you Anne can tell me that as a therapist, like, okay, what you're feeling is okay. Like, if I'm telling you, because this doing telehealth is a whole nother, like, this is different. This is
It's
different,
different.
you
Yeah.
know, and 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 to the point where we're talking about this grief is, many of us compartmentalize. So we have our workspaces and we deal with work at work, and then we come home and we have kind of a ritual, to separate the two roles. Well, all the roles are all
Mm.
in
All
one.
mushed together right now, right?
So being able to, help try to navigate that and develop some routines is going to be really, really important. And then the other piece, the other kind of closing thought is recognizing, what things you can change and what things you cannot change. There are some things that we just don't have, power over, right? And
That's
so
it.
that's when grace comes in. That's when we allow ourselves to ourselves grace, because the truth of the matter is nobody has it all right now.
No.
Nobody. We're
No.
used to having some control and having some ways that we can navigate, but no, you're not the only one that doesn't quite have all the answers. So give yourself grace.
Yeah.
Give yourself and say that's okay, and give your kids grace, because they're trying to figure it out too.
That's
Their
right.
their level of stress is the same. It might be different stuff, but
Right.
it's the same type of thing. And
That's
so
right.
being able to say, hey, babe, you know what? Don't worry about your homework today. We'll figure it out. We'll, don't worry about your chores today. Let's go outside and jump on the trampoline. Let's walk the
Right.
block. And just being able to come together and just meet them right there where they
Yes.
are. I think it's just so important.
I
And
think,
again, so much more to say, but
yeah.
time.
I think that's really critical because one of the things that I've been stressing is, to use this time to be more relational, build
Yeah.
relationships, um, yes, you have boundaries. Yes, you have rules. Yes, you have guidelines, and you're keeping up with routine or new routines as much as possible. But the bottom line and the foundation of it should be relational.
Yes. Yes, for sure. The bottom line is relational, because how it's amazing to me, how we could use this as a master reset, as an opportunity to connect on a different and a more intimate level, with our families in ways we never be able to do before. And that is by no means to discount the stress that people are under, the financial binds and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I'm not discounting that at all. But when I mentioned earlier about looking for the joys, finding those joys,
Yes.
finding those ways we can play tic-tac-toe, we can play hopscotch, outside, things that we can do together to connect, even in the midst of our grief. But at the same time, not discounting our grief. Go ahead, if you got to cry and you got to cuss somebody, and you got whatever it is, find you a safe place to do it. Don't hurt nobody, but find, your safe place to do it. And if you if prayer is something that brings you peace, by all means, God is not centered at the church. That's one of the things that people are really stressed over. It's like, I can't go to church. Well, this lets us know that we don't have to be at church to be in relationship with Christ. So
That's
not
right.
only are we able to build these relationships within our homes, we can build this a true and a dynamic relationship with our Savior as well. And so again, that healing comes from the master healer when it comes to our grief and our stress and the relational challenges that we're dealing with, for sure.
Well, you have said more than a mouthful. And that is so true. That is so true. I mean, I think we can talk for another half hour about navigating this space, but I just want to say thank you for joining us tonight on Teen Talk Live. And I want to thank everybody for watching, and I ask you to share this out, because this might be something that blesses somebody, that helps somebody to navigate this space, because none of us, I mean, this is all new to all of us, and we're all trying to figure it out. So please share. And if you have questions and you're struggling, reach out to somebody, reach out to Lady O, reach out to myself, and we'll help you find the proper resources to get through this time. Because like you said, Lady O, we have to be in community. And if you don't have a tribe, this is a great time to build a tribe. No one needs to be an island going through this time. Everybody needs connections. And so build those connections. And if you need help building those connections, hey, let me know. I'll help you build those connections. Because that's what we do.
Right. There's so many Facebook groups and things like that are for
Yes.
common interests and things, for sure. Yes. This is a
Yes.
beautiful time to be able to connect, and even to get to know your neighbors, because a lot of us are so busy that we don't even know our neighbors. We might wave at them, but we don't even know them. And
That's
so this
right.
get to know anybody else,
That's right. That's right. So again, I want to thank you, Lady O. Please tell our audience what's coming up for you and where they can find you.
So what's coming up for me is really, I have a couple little more opportunities like this one. So again, thank you so much, Ann, for providing this space, not only
Absolutely.
to your for those that will have access to this information. So thank you so much. And thank you
Absolutely.
for choosing me, because surely you could have chosen 100 other people.
Thank you.
So my name is Lady, my handle on everything is at Lady Olivia Tate. That's on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So I would absolutely love to connect with you. So, and again, thank you so
Excellent.
much, Ann.
All right. Thank you for being here. Thank you for saying yes. This is so amazing. Thank you for the resources and the information that you have shared with our audience. And once again, thank you for joining another episode of Teen Talk Live. This has been your host, Ann Dillard. And until next time, take care, stay safe, and be good to each other.
I love it.